The TOMAS HERTL trade price has officially been revealed, but it honestly looks like it's going to take a lot to actually get this guy. I could actually see a ton of NHL teams actually going for him. Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan, and today we're going to be talking about TOMAS HERTL and his trade price being officially revealed from the San Jose Sharks. Now, Kevin Kurz of The Athletic has put out a great recent article detailing everything about the TOMAS HERTL situation, but also giving us great insight on what the Sharks want in a TOMAS HERTL trade and what the team trading for him would have to give up as well. But when it comes to TOMAS HERTL, what will it take for your favorite NHL team to acquire him, and what teams will be in on TOMAS HERTL within the next year? Watch till the end for all the details and all of the trade rumors, and make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are new. 60% of the people that are watching are not subscribed. If you like hockey, this channel is the place to be. Now, we've been on top of this TOMAS HERTL situation for a pretty long time now, especially these past couple of weeks. There's been a lot of info and a lot of details coming out, namely that TOMAS HERTL and the Sharks haven't really been discussing an extension whatsoever, and TOMAS HERTL also wants to wait until at least the season starts to see how it goes with San Jose before making a decision on if he wants to go to a different team or if he wants to have a change of scenery. But really, when it comes to San Jose, they're not going to be a playoff team. They're not going to be a serious contender, and TOMAS HERTL at this point says he wants to win and he wants to be on a great team. I think the best way he gets that is if he's on a different team, and I think there'll be a main reason why we do see an eventual trade deadline deal, or even earlier for a few teams that want to get ahead of time. But I think there are a lot of teams out there that would love to have TOMAS HERTL. I know I would, because TOMAS HERTL is absolutely amazing and extremely underrated. This is a guy that might not be as good as Jack Eichel when he's healthy, but I think is a much better player than a Christian Dvorak who was just traded to the Montreal Canadiens. I think TOMAS HERTL could be a solid first-line center for a lot of NHL teams right now, but the injury woes have kind of plagued that from happening with San Jose consistently. But again, as a trade deadline deal, I think this could work out a lot for especially the team that's going to end up trading for him, especially with the potential trade package that has been revealed too. But when it comes to TOMAS HERTL, I absolutely love him, and he's in the prime of his career right now at age 27 as a 6'2" centerman. This last year in 2021 got 43 points in 50 games played, but even going back to 2019 where he got 74 points in 77 games, this is a guy that when he is healthy and on his game is really the heart of the San Jose Sharks offense and forecheck and pressure. He's really a guy that puts it all on the ice and doesn't take many shifts off. But again, the injury woes are there, but at the same time, when he is healthy, this is a guy that would be stupendous to add to a ton of teams. And I'm just saying, for the New York Rangers or a team like the Minnesota Wild who could use that big time center, I think it's absolutely perfect for teams like that. But with the trade price, could your favorite NHL team actually trade for TOMAS HERTL? Well, let's just see what that trade price is. So again, according to Kevin Kurz, he went on this last article, basically a mailbag article, answering questions that were given to him, and one person asked this to Kevin Kurz: what do you think could be a potential return for HERTL if traded? And Kevin Kurz of The Athletic said this: if you're looking at this from the Sharks' perspective and assume they are sticking to their plan to compete sooner rather than later, the return would have to be more than just draft picks. He goes on to say quite a bit more, we'll get into that, but I think that first quote is definitely interesting because obviously with different trades like Christian Dvorak, Arizona's looking for first-round picks, they're looking for high-quality draft picks, but for San Jose, that's not exactly the focus. They obviously want a first-round pick and it'll likely be a part of this deal, but they also want prospects and young players that can contribute now for the team and be a big part of that future. So that's very, very interesting. San Jose's not just going for draft picks, but also players, which we kind of knew already, but it will kind of focus in on the teams that have that available players. I mean, not everybody has a great young player that can fill onto an NHL roster, so it kind of limits the teams that could be available. Now, Kevin Kurz goes on to say this: along with a first-round pick, they would have to get at least one potential high-end prospect in return too, and preferably someone who could play NHL games ahead of or along the same timeline as guys like William Eklund, Thomas Bordeleau, and some of the other prospects who are around 19 or 20 years old. In other words, probably 2 years away. So that's also super interesting there. So again, a top-end prospect alongside a first-round pick who can play right now and be a big part of the Sharks' future. So that is definitely interesting. So it's not just a first, it's a great prospect, which just adds to the value that San Jose is getting back. Now he also goes on to say this: in a perfect world, that player is probably a center, but considering Ryan Merkley's declining stock and Brent Burns' advancing age, a defenseman might just be as welcome. So you also see some of the focus positionally that the Sharks are focusing on with the prospect coming back. Preferably it would be a center, but they could also go for a top-end defensive prospect, and I think that also widens the potential teams that could be available. If it was just a top-end center, then that definitely limits it, but with defensemen being included there are a lot of teams out there that if they could get a top 2 center, a number 1 center especially, for a first round pick and just an extra defensive prospect, I think there's a lot of teams out there that can make that deal and still be pretty comfortable, and especially for a player like TOMAS HERTL, it's not completely unreasonable. But the problem is, of course, him only having 1 year left and likely being a rental. That plays into it, but if you're also able to sign him long term, TOMAS HERTL is a wonderful player, a great team player too, and I think could be almost a great situation for anybody bringing him in, and especially as well being a true playoff performer. So even if it is a rental, I can still see where teams are coming from getting a guy like HERTL. I think it would be a great deal, even if it is a first round pick and a high-end prospect. If you're trying to win the cup, HERTL is probably one of the best players available for this next year. Now, some more interesting quotes coming from Kevin Kurz here. He says this: less than 2 weeks ago, I wrote that both the Sharks and HERTL may be better off waiting before they discuss a contract extension, and I feel even more strongly about that now based on a couple of conversations I've had since then and HERTL's own comments a few days later. Now, he goes on to say this as well. But I would add that based on what I've heard, it's going to take a heck of a lot of convincing for HERTL to want to remain. Don't expect a quick resolution here. So those are super interesting quotes. I mean, we were talking about earlier how maybe there's a potential of San Jose as well that HERTL might want to sign a contract there, but even if that does happen, there still might be a chance that HERTL wants out and wants to go to a different team. And again, with Kevin Kurz saying this, is going to take a lot of convincing for HERTL to want to remain. That is a heavy blow for the Sharks' chances to be able to re-sign him. And I think at this point, it's almost confirmed that HERTL will eventually leave. I mean, at this point, San Jose is not going to be a great team next year, even in that terrible Pacific Division. And I just see this year being the straw that breaks the camel's back, per se, especially with HERTL and some of those older players there. I think this might be the year that San Jose finally goes more in a rebuilding route. We will see, but I think HERTL is going to be the first big domino to drop, as he probably should be. He's probably one of the most valuable players, and probably the most valuable player San Jose has right now, and they could get a lot for him. I mean, a first-round pick and a high-end prospect. If they are going to rebuild, that's a good start, but again, it doesn't seem like San Jose has too much leverage really at this point either, and it seems like they're not going to be able to re-sign him at the same time. Now, I'm not sure if every single NHL team should be interested in TOMAS HERTL, but I am saying if any NHL team has a top 6 center need, TOMAS HERTL is honestly maybe the most reliable option out there, especially with Jack Eichel's health being in question and likely costing a lot less. TOMAS HERTL, to me, at a first-round pick, probably a later first-round pick and a top-end prospect, that's kind of all right to pay for a rental that can make as much of an impact as TOMAS HERTL can. But again, any team that's trying to make a playoff push, trying to be better for the playoffs, and needs a top 6 centerman, TOMAS HERTL is likely the best bet and the most consistent bet you can get right now. I mean, we were kind of comparing it a little bit in some prior videos, but comparing Christian Dvorak to TOMAS HERTL, I like Christian Dvorak a lot, but he's just not close to TOMAS HERTL's overall impact on both sides of the ice, his play driving, his consistency, even though the health can sometimes be in question. If you're going to trade for him for half a year just for the playoffs, TOMAS HERTL has proven how good he can be in the playoffs come playoff time, and I feel like for a lot of teams it's going to be extremely valuable, and will be a big reason why TOMAS HERTL still gets a lot back for San Jose at the trade deadline. And just reading off some of HERTL's playoff stats, it's really easy to see how enticing he is as a trade piece. I mean, his first full playoffs in 2016, he got 11 points, 6 goals, 5 assists in 20 games. In 2018, he played 10 games, getting 6 goals, 3 assists for just 9 points. In 2019, a couple of years back, in 19 games, he got 10 goals, 5 assists for 15 points. This is a guy that comes through in goals with spades during the playoffs and just consistently does it as well. This is a guy that come playoff time, just has so much clutchness in his blood, and I feel like for a lot of teams out there that, again, need that top six centerman, there's really not that many better options. I mean, if we're comparing even Jack Eichel with Tomas Hertl has made the playoffs and has been great in those playoff games. He's a proven playoff commodity, and I think that's a big reason why teams like Boston, teams like the New York Rangers are going to be super interested come trade deadline time, and honestly, there could be a huge bidding war around Hertl too. Now, there's quite a few teams out there that I think would be super interested in Tomas Hertl, but there's 3 teams that I think are mainly the teams that'll contend for Tomas Hertl right to the very end. And we're going to go through all 3 of these teams, see what they could give up, see what San Jose could give back, and what potential trades we could see at the trade deadline. Now, the first team that I think is going to be super interested, and this might be the most obvious team as they probably should be, but going on to the first team I want to mention here, it honestly might be the best fit for Tomas Hertl. I'm going to move on to an East team here in the Boston Bruins. Now, this makes a lot of sense, firstly, because San Jose is sending him to the Eastern Conference. Even if it might be a rental, that is a factor. But also when it comes to Boston, I think in terms of fit with Tomas Hertl, they're probably the best team out there. They could really use that second-line center, and it could really use a second-line center to replace David Krejci's presence lost. I think that would be an amazing replacement, and Tomas Hertl would be so good behind Patrice Bergeron, especially, again, when you get to the playoffs. But the only problem I see right now the Boston Bruins fit in a potential Tomas Hertl trade is what they would have to give back. Because when it comes to Boston and when it comes to the trade price, San Jose wants a first-round pick and a great center or great defensive prospect. And Boston doesn't really have that unless you count like a Mason Lowry or maybe a Jack Studnicka. They do have Fabian Lisa on the wing, but it seems like San Jose doesn't want to go for a winger here in a trade package back. They want to get that supreme center prospect or defensive prospect, which Boston doesn't quite have. That's the only thing that I think is really pushing the Bruins out from clearly number 1, but I think they are the best fit on paper for Tomas Hertl, and I still think could get a trade done this next year. But now going on to this second team that I think will be a great fit for Tomas Hertl and does have great center and defensive prospects, we're going to move on to a team that could really use Tomas Hertl's presence on their top 6 in the Minnesota Wild. Now, just like Boston, I think Tomas Hertl would fit in wonderfully with that Minnesota team, and just imagining Hertl with Kirill Kaprizov, I think that would be absolutely amazing. I mean, Kaprizov would go from Victor Rask to Tomas Hertl, not a bad upgrade, I must say, but a thing that kind of separates the Wild a little bit from the Bruins is just the amount of prospects that they could potentially give up on center, on defense. They have a lot of quantity there, and I do think they have some quality too. I don't know if they're going to get rid of a Marat Kuzadinov, but I think he might be the most likely bet going back to San Jose as a center prospect and a second rounder from 2020. But you also have other defensemen in that mix too. You can maybe go for a Ryan O'Rourke potentially from that Wild D. You can maybe go for a couple others, but there's options out there. I think most likely though, it would be a first-round pick and Marat Kuzadinov. That, to me, makes the most sense for Minnesota, and I think that is a deal that they would be a little bit comfortable getting done. And they could also be a team that maybe re-signs Hertl if they're able to get some cap space off the books. But I do think when it comes to Minnesota, even as a rental, Hertl makes a ton of sense. But now going on to the third team that I think would be a great fit for Tomas Hertl, I might be a little bit biased because I want Tomas Hertl on this team so badly. But I think it would work so incredibly well. They have a lot of great defensive prospects. They even have some good center prospects that San Jose could definitely use. Though I do see this team definitely going on the defensive route in a trade. But going on to number 3, I have the New York Rangers. I don't know for the Rangers if there has been really ever an opportunity to get as good of a second-line center as Tomas Hertl right now. Obviously besides Jack Eichel. But again, when it comes to Hertl, he's a proven commodity in the playoffs and is healthy, which is a big difference right now between the two. But I think when it comes to the Rangers, this is a deal they could easily make. A first-round pick if they're around the playoff race, I think would still be fine to get rid of with the prospect pool they have. And when it comes to defensive prospects, they have an absolute boatload of guys to potentially get rid of. You got maybe a Braden Schneider in the mix, a Hunter Skinner, maybe a Tarmo Reunanen, but there's a lot of guys out there. I think most likely it would be like a Matthew Robertson or maybe even Braden Schneider. We will see about that. But again, if the Rangers are in a playoff spot, I think Tomas Hertl is their best bet and will be so good as a second-line center behind Mika Zibanejad. That to me would be perfect and the best solution for the Rangers right now. If they get Tomas Hertl, I don't know if there's many upgrades the team can make at this point. But that'll be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this trade rumor breakdown, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Comment down below. Do you want your favorite NHL team to trade for TOMAS HERTL? What do you see going back in a trade? And where do you see him landing around the trade deadline? Let me know your thoughts. Make sure you comment down below all your thoughts there. Share this video with anybody you know online that likes hockey. And click this card for all my trade rumor content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.